Hi guys, excuse me. It's Lanikia, and I am coming to you with season 3, episode 2 of The Handmaid's Tales. Tale. So as you can see, I held off and I watched it today. So we start off with June just she's standing there and she's thinking, and she's actually waiting on her new walking partner to come. So her new walking partner is of Matthew, and she is into all of it. Like, she's going, she's telling June that, I hear we're gonna get Chicago back. So I guess maybe they had lost it, but anyway, she said, I hear we're gonna get Chicago and all of that information. And so she's just walking and talking, and she's like, I'm praying for the Waterfords. And June was like, oh, that's so nice of you. That poor baby is missing. And then she said, what would make of Joseph do that? And June said, but I'm sorry, I got the name wrong last video. I was saying of Fred, but it's of Joseph. What would make of Joseph do that? And June was like, I am of Joseph, because she's talking about Emily. And so that shuts up of Matthew for the moment. And June is just like, who is this? Who is this? Noah, she just so into it, and she, like, I guess she doesn't mind it. She doesn't mind everything that's going on. She feels like this is her purpose and she's serving a purpose. So they go to the market and we see Alma. So Alma is, I believe, I don't, of Robert. So that's who Alma is. So June tells of Robert that they have canned tomatoes. And so I guess that's their code, to meet me at the canned tomatoes. So they go over there, and so she tells her what of Matthew has told her, that, that they're taking Chicago, and of Robert she's not so sure about that, and everything. And so she's asking of Matthew about, of Robert about, let me just call her Alma. She's asking Alma about, have you heard anything about the Mackenzies? And she's like, no, my Martha is so mean. And so that's when we find out that there's a friction between the Marthas and the handmaids. The Marthas don't really care for the handmaids. So we find that out. So then that all goes, and then June goes back to her house, and she so there's two Commander Lawrence has two Marthas. He has Cora, who we met last season. Remember, she was the sassy one, and then we had Beth, who we meet this time, and she's more of, like, I guess, the cook. She takes care of everything, whereas Cora, I guess, takes care of more of the personal needs of the commander and his the wife, Mrs. Lawrence. Okay, so then we see Cora tells June to go into the park. So Beth doesn't seem to like June. Like, June brings back steak. She was supposed to bring back steak, but she brought back filet. And anyways, you could just tell that she's annoyed with June. And so Cora comes in and she tells them they're waiting for you in the parlor. And in the parlor is Aunt Lydia, Eleanor, who is Commander Lawrence's wife, and Commander Lawrence. So they're all in the parlor waiting for June. And so they're talking, and they're saying, how's everything going? And they're saying everything is fine. June is doing well. And they ask about the ceremony, because June was fertile last week, and they didn't have a ceremony. He's not having a ceremony with June, and he says, everything went well, and everything. So they're pretty much lying. But Eleanor cannot keep it together. She seems very fragile in this scene. So she's ready to go to bed. So she gets up to leave. And as the commander escorts her out to take her to bed, Aunt Lydia grabs June by the arm, because Aunt Lydia is sitting down, because Emily put a little hurting on her. So Aunt Lydia is sitting down. And so she grabs June by the arm, and she says, if something's weird going on with him, like, what's wrong with Eleanor? She's like, what's wrong with the wife? And June is like, I don't know. And she said, if something's weird is going on with him, you need to let me know. Because Emily she was like, of Joseph was only in the house 2 days before, I guess she just snapped or whatever. And Emily, and it's like, Aunt Lydia, she snapped on you because of all the stuff that you've done to her, but they're so caught up in the system that they think that, it can't be because of this. It has to be because he's doing something weird. Not that, mutilated her, or and we've punished her and we've made her be raped, and she's not, she doesn't even like men. We've done all this to her, but that couldn't be the reason she snapped. You know how they do. But anyways, so then Aunt Lydia, June is just like, she, nothing's out of the ordinary or everything. So Aunt Lydia's like, I want to go check your bedroom to make sure you're keeping everything tidy. Now, mind you, Aunt Lydia, like, all of this is just like, we're not in to a long period of time. Aunt Lydia still has the bruises. She's still, hurt up from, what Emily did to her. So she tries to go up the stairs, and she cannot go up the stairs. And instead of just admitting that, okay, I'll check the bedroom next time, or just leaving that alone, she wants to go up these stairs, and she takes like the first step, and she collapses. She's in pain. And so June is like, well, maybe we could just do it next time. And Aunt Lydia tasers her with a cattle prod in her stomach. And she's just like, if I had my way, what you did at the Mackenzies, you would be hanging from the wall, because I'm not as forgiving as Aunt Elizabeth, who let you come get reassignment. I would have made sure that you were dead for what you did at the Mackenzies and everything. So I guess Aunt Lydia, she's frustrated. It's almost like it's two people. There's the one where she's just, oh, I'm so concerned about the girls. And then there's the other one where she's like, I'm so into this faith that any wrong, misguided steps or anything is punished. You should be punished for it. So then we go to the commander comes down, and Aunt Lydia is just like, oh, June was just doing a gossip or something, which June was not. She was just telling Aunt Lydia, you need help. Like, just don't do it this time or whatever. But so Aunt Lydia leaves. They get her wheelchair, and she leaves out and everything. And the commander makes an offhanded comment about, oh, I wonder how many voltages are in that thing. I don't know. He's just weird, because it's on one hand it's like he wants to try to help, and on another one it's like I don't know. But anyways, y'all tell me what you think. And so then, okay, so we go to that part. Okay, I'm completely going ahead of my notes. I'm sorry. Okay, so then we go and we see that Luke can't interact with the baby. Of course, it's not. He knows it's not his. He's thinking the way she got this baby is through rape and everything. So it's not his baby. It is June's baby. But Maura is like, she's very loving and everything, but he can't do it. So Aaron, who is the other roommate with Maura and Luke, she asks, she tells him Emily, and he says, yeah, so when is Emily gonna, reach out to her family or whatever? And Maura just tells him, give her time. She has to have time to adjust and everything, because Maura understands what Emily is going through, because remember last season, she had a hard time. They didn't know she was having a hard time. Well, they kind of did, but she was having a hard time adjusting to being free again, because that's what it is. Like, you've been held captive, like a slave, and you've been abused mentally, physically, emotionally, and now you're free again, and it's an adjustment to that freedom and everything that they're having to go through. So then we see that Emily is at the doctor, and the doctor is just telling Emily everything, about because they did genital mutilation on Emily, so she's telling her that they can reconstruct that, and she's telling her about going to a psychiatrist, and she's just giving her all this information that she needs, because she's having to come back into the world again after everything that she's been through. Because you remember, Emily went to the colonies. Like, Maura never had to go to the colonies. She was at Jezebel's, but she didn't have to go to the colonies. And so Emily's been through a lot physically, just being there. So she's just telling her everything that she needs, and she lets her know she has high cholesterol, and Emily's just like, what? Because she's just like, what? I have high cholesterol, and so I was like, I don't okay. So then moving on from that, we see Cora and Bethany are helping. Okay, so June needs something because she got burned by the cattle prod. So she goes in and asks Cora for help, so like something to put on it. And when she goes in there, there's another Martha in there, because remember, he has two, but there's three in there. So she's like, she closes the door and she's like, y'all are helping her escape. And so Cora is, this is not the Cora we saw last season, because last season, remember, Cora is very sassy and she really didn't pay attention to the commander, and it almost seemed like she ran the house. On this episode, she seemed almost afraid of him. So she told them, we can't move a person, like, if the mission has to be, like, she was just like, the mission, she can't be here because the commander is not going to allow her to be here. But Beth and June want to find the Martha help, and they want her to be able to lay low there until they can get her moved out and everything. Sorry. So then we see that the commander comes in, and he's like, who is this? And Cora lies, and she tells him it's the woman just came to help polish the silver, and he tells her, you're lying to me. That's the first one. That's the first lie. So you're lying to me. And he asks June, so he tells them, get rid of her, like, get her out of here. So then June goes to him and she tells him, like, she tells him, you helped me, why won't you help her? And he said, I don't like strangers in my home, I don't know her. She said, I was a stranger, you didn't know me. And he said, you think so? And I'm like, what is going on? Because it seems like he does have some kind, like, maybe he's been following June's story, I don't know. But so she's like, you think so? He's like, you think so? But anyway, she asked him to help the woman, and he said, it's your funeral. So that pretty much means, okay, you can help her, but you're going to end up getting hanged for it or whatever. So that's that. So then she goes back and tells Beth and Cora that he said that the handmaid could stay, and Beth makes it a crude joke about, oh, you must have gave him a BJ or something, and she was like, red center special or something like that, because you know they teach them about all that rape stuff. They don't teach them that. They just teach them to take rape. But anyway, so she makes a flippant comment back. So then they take up the tea we have to take this tea to Mrs. Lawrence, and June is like, I'll take it. And then the woman, Beth, tells her thank you as she's leaving out, because if it wasn't for June, their plan would have been gone down the drain. So then June knocks on the door, and she takes the tea. She takes the tea to Mrs. Lawrence and knocks on the door to let her know. They don't go inside. They just leave it at the door and knock to let her know to come and get it. And then as she's walking out, she goes downstairs and goes by Mr. Lawrence, like Commander Lawrence's study, and he tells her to close the door. Excuse me. So she closes the door, and then she goes and tells them that it's time. They can do it now because he's deep in his studies right now, so we can get away with this. And so she tells them she wants to go. And they're like, no, like, this is a risky mission and everything. And she's like, well, we got to go now while he's just getting into his studies, and we won't be missed. So she, Beth, and the Martha that they're taking, who tells June she's a chemist, because she was asking June, what were you, in the war or something? Were you a soldier? And she was like, no, what were you? And the woman tells her she was a chemistry major. She was a professor with chemistry. And so they end up going. So they go. So June dresses up as a Martha, and she says, as a Martha, it's the first time she's invisible. She's completely invisible. No one pays attention to the Marthas, which is why the Marthas probably are able to get away with more stuff than the handmaids. Because June does say, you know how she goes into her thoughts. She does say that the Marthas, you know, they're in gray. No one notices them. They're just in a bland color. They blend in. No one pays attention. But they put the handmaids in red because you could see a spot a handmaid. If you have all that white. She's made a comment about all the white snow, but you can see that red dot, that red in there, all that. And that is true, because I remember when we used to go to Six Flags and all that kind of stuff as kids, they would always say wear red because it's easier to spot out in a crowd or whatever. So I don't remember if we wore it or not, but I knew that I saw that on the news. But anyways, so they go along and they have to get this pass. And so they have to have this card. So they're going through with their card, and one of the Marthas, not the chemist or Beth, but another Martha that was in front of June didn't have the right pass or something, so they took her off. I don't know where they took her, but they took her off. But anyways, this is a part of the whole Gilead process that June has never seen, because the handmaids are not allowed to go out to this part because it has so many chemicals. It's like laundry and everything. So she was like, even though the commanders and all, they like to stick to all these traditions, they still like their dry cleaning and everything. So they get that dry cleaning and everything done for, themselves. And it's all these chemicals and everything that are out there. So they don't take the handmaids out there, but the Marthas, they can go ahead and go. So, so then, so they go and the Martha goes to the house. And so it's not a house, it's like a warehouse. So they put her in the warehouse, and she's like, y'all gonna stay with me? And they're like, no, we gotta get back before the commander finds out, and we'll be in trouble for helping you. And so they're like, no, we can't, that we can't stay. So June gives her a hug, and she just tells her, be strong and go with God and everything. And so they leave. And as they're leaving, Beth warms up to June more, and she tells her that that she was happy to that June, was able to help them. And so she was like, don't worry about her, because she was like, do you remember of Glenn? No, do you remember Mora? And she was like, yeah, she worked as Ruby in Jezebel. And she said yes, she remembered Mora. And she was like, she was able to make it to Canada. And that's when Beth tells June that, she's not going, this Martha is not going to Canada. She's going deeper because she is a chemist and we need her to make bombs. So she's not just going to go to Canada and, be safe. She's actually going to be a part of the resistance and everything. So that we find out that. Okay, so then we go to Luke. We go to Canada, and Luke is so they're all at dinner, and they're eating their dinner and everything. Because you remember Luke can cook, so he's cooked up a meal, and they talk about eating fish, and Maura was like, I'm sorry about the fish, because Emily, before all of this, was a vegetarian, but of course she had to, learn to eat what she could eat. So that made more sense about why she was shocked at her cholesterol being high, because she's never had to worry about that before, because she didn't eat meat like that. But and so she was like, it's probably all that, meat and butter that they had to eat, that they fed them. And so Luke makes a comment about why, what did your wife do? Because he says June, she had meatless Mondays, and she, we had this and that. And so he starts asking Emily these questions about her wife and everything. And he knows it makes Emily uncomfortable. And he's frustrated with Emily because he's like, why won't you call your wife? Like, you are here. Why won't you call your wife and you have a wife and child that are here? Why won't you call them to let them know you're okay and everything? And you should do it. Like, you deal with it. And so Maura tries to tell him, like, to lay off. She's like, because he's drinking. I didn't say that earlier, but earlier he was drinking as well. So Luke is starting to drink a lot now. So he's pretty much drunk. But he's kind of laying into Emily, asking all these personal questions that he knows is going to make her uncomfortable, because he's upset that she won't call, because he's thinking that if that was June, is June going to call when she makes it in, or would she wait days before she let me know she was here and everything? And so Maura finally tells him to get out, go get some potatoes, so he can leave Emily alone. And so she and Emily have a conversation. And Emily, and Maura just pretty much tells her, like, I understand, like, what you're going through, and you go at your pace. Like, when you're ready to speak to your wife, when you're ready to talk to your family. You've been through a lot, so go at your pace, and, don't worry about what anyone else thinks or says or anything. So that was a nice little moment between the two of them. Because she also said, and Maura did say, she was like, people can get together, and it's not the same. Like, I've seen people who get back together, like, and it's not the same. And I think that's like when people go away, whether it's to fight for our country or any time where they go away and then they come back. Sometimes you're not the same two people who first, when you were always together after you've had that time. separation. So anyways, the next thing we know, so we go back to June. So the next thing we know, we hear that they're in the kitchen. June is helping Beth in the kitchen, and they're warming up to each other. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, Rita would never let me help in the kitchen or everything." So she's helping Beth, and they hear a noise, a scream, and they're like, "What is that?" And it's the Martha's at the door. So they bring the Martha in, and one has been shot. So remember the chemist earlier? She's back, and she has another Martha with them. When they were trying to leave, the Guardians came, and so that one Martha got shot. And so they take her to the basement and everything, and then they hear the commander. And so they're like, he yells for Beth and Cora. So June is like, well, Beth can't go because she has blood all on her from the Martha who was shot because she helped her down the stairs. So June is like, I'll go, and Cora will go. So they went upstairs, and they said, he asked them what's going on, and Cora lied again. This was the second time she lied, and she said, oh, Beth saw a rat, and she screamed, and he said, you're lying to me. And then he said that's the second time, and he tells June what's going on, and she admits, what's going on and everything. And so then the Guardians came as they're doing this, and he's like, get rid of her. And Beth tried to protest a little bit, and he like, get rid of her. Because at the end of the day, I think he helps, but as long as it doesn't hurt him, if that makes sense, you know what I mean? So they're like, okay. So the Guardians come in, and they're like, there was 2 fugitives, sir, and we were just checking around to make sure everything's okay. So while they're doing that, before Beth was going to go downstairs to try to, June was going to go downstairs to try to, hide the Martha. But as she's going down, she sees on the wall that there's blood on the wall. So she's trying to get the blood off the wall, and the Guardians are coming because the Commander Lawrence has invited them for a warm drink. At the time as they're about to come and walk up on June, Mrs. Lawrence comes, Eleanor comes, and she says, oh, did he offer y'all something warm? And she directs them to another room to sit down, and she'll take care of it. And so they go in the room, the commander and the 2 Guardians go in the room to sit down, and then that leaves Cora, Eleanor, and June. And so as they're walking to the kitchen, June tries to put her body in front of it, but Eleanor sees the blood on the wall, and so she tells Cora, clean that up. You go and help. Because I don't know if she knew exactly what was going on downstairs, but she's figuring it out. And did y'all notice that was the clear, like she was completely clear-headed. Her mind was clear. Like she was the lady of the house in that moment. Not fragile like she would have been earlier on what we saw last season. And so June goes back downstairs, and when she goes back downstairs, the Guardians are around the house looking as well. Okay, so the Guardians are around the house looking as well, right? And so then June, the Martha that's been shot, I mean, I don't want to be insensitive, but she was making a lot of noise. Like, because she was in pain, and she didn't want to die, and we understand that. But June was like, you got to be quiet. And she's moaning, and and so the Guardians are flashing their lights and everything, looking in from the outside. And June just keeps telling her, you got to be quiet because, they'll hear you and they'll come in or whatever, and we'll all be hanged. And so Beth is like, why don't we just go and tell the Guardians that she's here, and they'll get her to the hospital in like 2 minutes and she can be saved. And Beth is like, no, we can't do that. If we do that, it'll bring down the whole network. Listen, I guess Beth was like, listen, I don't want her to die, but sometimes there's casualties in it. So we can't risk one person bringing down the whole network. Like, we're going to have to figure this out right here. So anyways, so she's on they have the Martha that's shot stretched out, and all the other Marthas are hiding because they're looking in they're in the basement, but you still have the window, so they're looking down, flashing the flashlights. And so then they're getting closer to the Martha, and June keeps telling her, please be quiet. You gotta be quiet. But she won't be quiet, and actually she is getting louder. So then they were about to flash a light on the Martha has been shot, and June runs up to her and she pulls her off the bed. The area that she was laying on, she pulls her down and she puts her hand over her and she tells her shut up because the Martha is being so loud. And so then they finally go away and everything. And she tells the Martha, I'm sorry and everything, you'll be okay now. But the Martha she does end up dying. She was shot, and Judith already says there's not a lot of bleeding, so she's probably bleeding internally. So, but she does end up dying, and the commander comes downstairs, and he tells Beth to go take care of Mrs. Lawrence. And so June, he tells June, well, I guess it wasn't your funeral after all, but he's upset. He's upset at June because he says, I knew you were going to be trouble. And she was like, we didn't know that Martha was going to come back. And he was like, no, I knew taking you in was going to be trouble. And so she's just like, well, how's Mrs. Lawrence? And he was like, no, don't talk to me about my life. He is livid because his wife is already fragile and he doesn't want to make this worse, even though he created all this in the first place. But anyways, he's livid, and he tells June to get rid of the Martha. So June dresses the Martha, she wraps her up and everything, and she's trying to take her outside, but she cannot lift her by herself. So Beth comes and she's helping June. So they get her outside, and the commander looks down. He's in the house, and he looks down and he says, Beth. And so he makes Beth come in, and he makes June do it by herself. So she drags the Martha, then she digs the grave, and she places the Martha inside of the grave and everything, and she buries her. That she prays for her, and she buries her that night. Oh, I am okay. So I moved past that page. So she buries her that night and everything, and that was the end of that. So then we see June taking a bath because of course she's dirty because. So then we see June taking a bath, and the Martha comes in, and June, I don't know, maybe she thought it was Lawrence, but she jumps, but it's the Martha, Beth, and Beth says he got rid of Cora, so we don't know where Cora went. But if you watch this episode, Cora kept telling them, y'all don't know him like I know him, and she seemed afraid of him. So I don't know where he took Cora. I don't know if she's written out of the script because they're going to work with the Beth character, or what's going on, but because it was not the same Cora that we saw last season that was very sassy and everything. But anyways, so she tells Beth that they'll give her butter for her hands because that's what they use to try to make their keep their hands soft and everything. And so then we see the baby is fussing. So we go back to Canada with Luke, and so he wakes up because the baby is fussing. And then Maura comes out, and she comes and gets the baby, and he was like, you got it all together, like you could handle everything. And she was like, no I don't, because if I had it all together, I would not be up in the middle of the night with a fussing baby. I would be somewhere with a beautiful woman, enjoying my life or whatever. And he was like, your mom isn't here because he was talking to the baby, but Maura was there because she had bigger work to do, and so she had to go back for your sister Hannah because I couldn't do it or whatever. So you can see that he feels guilty about June is doing all this hard work, like taking care of the family, getting the kids. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get the babies and everything to safety, and he feels I guess less than because and so Maura tells him no, she needs you to take care of this baby. That's the job that she needed for you to do. So don't feel bad because this is what you're supposed to be doing and everything. So then we see he finally bonds with the baby. That's pretty much what that scene was. He finally starts to bond with the baby. So then we see June is going on her walking, how they go to the store. So she's going on her walking trip, and Mrs. Lawrence is planting flowers at the grave. She's used that digged up fresh earth to plant flowers and everything. And I don't know, she's looking like she's she's feeling better. She doesn't look so fragile like she had been looking last season and earlier in the episodes. So she and June just look at each other and they keep going. Then June keeps going, and then she meets up with Matthew, and Matthew tells her that they were able to trace the Martha. They was able to escape the chemist's footprints, but then they lost them in the river. So more than likely that Martha probably got away. We're not for sure, but I'm assuming that she did, just based on that they weren't able to find her. And Matthew was like, oh my gosh, she's so selfish. She had a shelter. They were providing for her. Like, cause she doesn't mind being there. So she was like, and that's how she does. They should take a ear, or they should take. I'm like, sis, like she's all for the punishment and everything. And so June is like, did you hear of hold on, let me see if I wrote that down. She's like, did you hear about was it of Glenn or someone? It was one of the handmaids, and she was like, oh yes, she was such a saint. And she was like, oh, she died because her walking partner snapped and pushed her in front of a moving bus, and at that moment a bus went by moving. So of Matthew, she was quiet. She stopped talking about it and everything. So then I was like, petty June. So then, I don't really want June to get too close to this and pay too much attention, because I said earlier that she told Alma that Matthew had told her about, oh, they said they're going to take Chicago. I don't want her to start getting into that information, because you never know if they're going to feed bad information just to see if June is one of the leaks or whatever, because they already know she causes problems. So I don't want her to get too deep into that with this leave this handmaid alone. Just walk with her, go to the store, and come on back home. So then Emily is getting her eyes done. And as she's getting her eyes done, they're asking her, how they do when you get your eyes checked and everything. And then it dawns on her that she's ready to see her wife. So she gives her wife a call, and her wife is happy to hear from her. Like, her wife is so happy she's blocked traffic. Like, they're like, I was like, okay, sis, I know you're happy to hear from her, but you got to move your vehicle, like pull over somewhere else or whatever. But anyways, that was the episode. It was really good. I don't know if I like I miss seeing Serena and the Commander Waterford and Rita and Nick and all them on this episode. But I guess we're going to just have to get used to like this new place that June is in, kind of like they did last season, until because I'm sure at some point she's going to get back with Serena and them. So yeah, I haven't watched episode 3. So if she got back in episode 3, my bad. But anyways, y'all, that was the episode. I enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave some comments so we can talk about it. Thanks. Bye.